Hello, everybody. My name is Danny Segura. Welcome to my, weekly. I don't even know because this is twice now that I do it in 1 week. So yeah, welcome to my live Q&A where I answer your questions regarding the world of mixed martial arts. My name is Danny Segura. I am from MMA Junkie and formerly MMA Fighting. That's probably where you guys know me best from, since I worked there the longest and fairly new MMA Junkie. But yeah, let's get this thing started. So my mouse and keyboard decided not to connect to my computer via Bluetooth. That's why it took a little bit of a wait there for me to get this thing started. So I guess I'll just be using the trackpad this time around. But good news is still running on good coffee. Mug from actually this is from Russia, 2018 World Cup. My friend that went to the World Cup brought it for me as a gift. It's a good mug. It's a good mug. Anyways, let's get these questions rolling. So just quick heads up. Um, the Twitter questions, I gotta admit, they were weak, but I do admit that we are approaching a fairly weak card here with UFC Rio Rancho. There's also a Bellator card as well. And yeah, it hasn't been like the strongest week as far as news goes, but nonetheless, I think there's still some talk about UFC 247. I had a couple questions about that. Obviously, controversial, the main event between John Jones and Dominick Reyes, and since both fighters have spoken about sort of what happened and how they saw the fight and all that. So we can get into that as well. But, there's a good amount to talk about UFC Rio Rancho. We can also get into Bellator if you really want. And yeah, there's a few other questions in mind. So again, Twitter questions were fairly weak. So if you're in the live chat, it's your job to step it up if we want to make it an hour here. But if not, I'm completely fine with cutting it a little early. It is a slow week, but yeah, hope everybody's doing well on this Thursday afternoon. And yeah, so I'm pulling up the questions right here, the Twitter questions, using the trackpad since my mouse didn't work. So let's get this thing going. All right. So the first question by the homie Terrence Leverett, and I am pronouncing his name because he said on the tweet that I've been pronouncing his name right, and this is something I've been wondering every week, every time he submits a question. So I got things right, which is good. Up, no, let me close email application. All right. So Terrence asks, and he corrects himself in a later tweet, so it might sound a little funky on first read. With Reyes winning most of his fight in the first round, there's a lot of film on him. Do you think a lack of film on Reyes is the reason for John's subpar showing compared to his past efforts? By the way, you do pronounce my name right. Thanks. No, thank you, Terrence. I appreciate you. And then Terrence goes on to correct himself. I meant there isn't a lot of film on Reyes. Yeah. So yeah, I get the point. Yeah, sure. That's part of it. I mean, one of the reasons why John Jones hasn't been looking as dominant, I think there's a lot of reasons. There always is. There isn't always like a single thing that causes everything. Although in some cases there is, but I think there's a series of things that are happening to John and why he hasn't been able to look so dominant as of recent. Number one is, again, when he was fighting, Machida, Shogun, Rampage, Rashad, like all these legends, and he was just running through them. There was so much tape on all those guys. Like those guys were already pretty established when he became champion. So, or when he was rising, right, and defending his belt. So he knew very well who he was facing. Like there was a lot of footage about all these guys. I mean, they've been fighting years prior, and all of them had over 20 plus fights, right? Whereas, and not only the amount of fights, but also in the stage. So there was footage, because there's guys that have a good amount of fights, but they fight in the middle of nowhere, and these little cards where the bout wasn't even recorded. So, or it's hard to find footage. And I know I'm going a little bit on a deviation here, or a little bit on a rant, but one of the things I learned about I'm pulling up John Jones' record here. One of the things I learned covering MMA on a local circuit, and when I was living in Miami, was I talked to a lot of these guys, and they'd be like, dude, I'm fighting somebody that's 4-1, 3-1, and from another state. They're coming here to Florida. And honestly, like, I did all the research I could possibly find, and there was absolutely nothing. Like, there was a vague record on Tapology, like this guy beat this guy, sometimes not even what round or how they did it, and no footage. So literally, they're just going by what other people have said about them. And yeah, obviously, this is much different. Dominick Reyes has fought in the UFC, has fought in main events prior to UFC 247, so there is footage on him. I'm not saying he's completely obscure fighter, but nonetheless, he's still a relatively new fighter that, like you mentioned, Terrence, there's not a lot of footage on him. So I do think that was a factor into Jon Jones' performance. Now, historically, Jon Jones has done amazing on rematches, and my buddy Luke Thomas has done a great job at pointing that out, and in his breakdowns. So that's what makes it interesting. If there is a rematch between Dominick Reyes and Jon Jones, like, historically, Jon Jones has done so much better. Why? Because he uses the knowledge. Him and his camp use the knowledge that they learned from that fight and the footage, to put it to use in the following fight. So yeah, that is a factor. But I do also agree that Jon Jones is maybe a little less creative nowadays than before. He is older. His body has a little bit more mileage than it used to. Not a whole lot, but certainly more. Obviously, he's logged in more fights. And also the opposition's just getting better. It's just getting more athletic, just overall just getting better. So yeah, a bunch of factors. But I do agree that the fact that Dominick Reyes is a fairly unknown guy, that had to be a factor as well. The fact that there's not a whole lot of footage in there. I mean, the guy's undefeated, so he's never been beat. So you don't really know exactly what tools used to beat him. I mean, sure, you can find and see what other fighters used to find success, but ultimately they failed because they didn't win, right? So the guy was undefeated leading up to that fight, and a lot of his fights were quick, man, for first round finishes. So again, yeah, it was a tough fight for Jon Jones. All right. Thanks for the questions, Terrence. All right. Now, the second Twitter question is by Michael Terrell. He says, who fights for the lightweight interim belt? Wait, what? Who fights for the lightweight interim belt? What do you mean? Did something happen to Khabib that I'm not aware of? Or light heavyweight? Michael, if you want to clarify that, that'd be great. I didn't get that question. There's another one here. Let me see. We'll skip that one for now and address it later if Mike was able to clarify. Let's see. Ooh. Kobe Cap Khabib Black Mamba. Do you think Merab has the tools to take out Scrappy Kenny? So this is now talking UFC Rio Rancho. UFC Rio Rancho, and let me pop the chat here so I don't have to be looking at this screen right here, which is, I don't like the aesthetic here. There we go. So I just look up here. Let's see. So Casey Kenny's fighting Merab the Machine in the preliminary card of UFC Rio Rancho this weekend. That's a good fight. It's a bantamweight bout. Casey Kenny is a scrappy dude, has a lot of tools. Very crafty. Merab is just, again, he's the machine. The dude's super powerful, strong with his striking, strong with his ground and pound as well, just powerful with everything he does. Do I think he has the tools? Yeah, sure. That's going to be a competitive fight. And frankly, I don't know who's going to win, but if I had to bet money on it, I'd go with Casey Kenny. I think he's a little craftier, a little more skilled, has a little bit more tools, but we've seen often fighters just muscle their way through things and really impose their wills just through physical strength. So that could be the case in this fight. But to answer your question, I think Casey gets it done. I think Casey Kenny gets it done. But it should be a good fight. That's one of the fights I'm really looking forward to on this UFC Rio Rancho card. It's not a strong card. It really isn't. But if you're a hardcore and you really take a close look, there is enough to keep you interested. And yeah, so I'll definitely be watching. I'll be working, but regardless, even if I wasn't working, I'd definitely watch this card. This is a good card. So yeah. All right. And shit, I believe that's it for the Twitter questions. We only had like 3. Oh, someone else said like a nice comment. It wasn't really a question. Maha Bobnar from in Europe. I don't know from where in Europe, but somewhere in Europe. No questions. Just wanted to show support. Love watching the streams. Greetings from Europe. Smiley face. Thank you. Appreciate that. That was the good old Yamasaki right there. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the support. I've been getting a lot of nice messages since I started this again because I was on vacation. I was out for a little bit, so I wasn't doing these as often. I was also in Miami at my parents' house, and I didn't have the right rig and equipment to do excuse me, to do these. So yeah, I'm back, and thank you. I appreciate the support. It means the world to me. It really does. It's really nice. So yeah, nice for you to send that message out. All right, let me check open up one more tweet to see if there's any more questions asked on Twitter. I think that was it. Like I said, a very, very weak showing from my Twitter people. So yeah, that was it. And then Michael Never, who fights for the lightweight interim belt. I don't know what Michael meant by that. He's probably still living in last summer when Max had a fight Dustin Poirier, right? All right, so that's it for the Twitter questions. So let's just have fun in the live chat, right? So go crazy. Again, anything you want to ask, I'm game. Bring it. Amy Wee, which trilogy would you like to see most in 2020? This is from the live chat. Shit, dude, there's a bunch. I feel like there's like a good amount of fights, like trilogy fights that can happen. So I think let's see. I don't know. That's a tough one. This is in no specific order. I'm just mentioning the trilogies that I'm interested in seeing, and maybe as I say them, I might categorize them into an actual order. But for sure, Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic. I mean, the first fight was a good fight. I mean, it was a spectacular knockout from Cormier, and yeah, that was good. And obviously, it was crazy, right? It was almost historic, like Cormier becoming champ. So that was big, yeah. And then the second one was an amazing fight. I mean, I really enjoyed watching it. Cormier looked amazing for 2 rounds. I think those are, especially the first round, that's really one of the best rounds he's ever looked. Like that right there shows you like he's far from washed up. I know he's talked about retirement and wants to hang up fairly soon, but boy, if he wanted to stick around, he could. He's got the skills. So yeah, that was a fantastic fight and fantastic comeback from Stipe, adjusting and attacking the body and just extreme toughness just displayed in that first or second round, taking mad shots from Cormier. So he looked good too. I mean, that was one of his better performances as well. You know, a true veteran, a true champion performance. He revealed, I think it was in the post-fight press conference where, you know, they asked him, "Oh, did your corner tell you that? Like, hey, they saw an opening, it's like attack the body." He's like, "Nope. Just started to work and I tried it." Like that's right there. That's a world-class fighter, someone that can adjust in mid-fight and actually problem solve while you got a Cormier, one of the best to ever do it, attacking you the entire time. So that was an amazing fight. So I can't wait for a trilogy. I actually spoke to Javier Mendez yesterday, I think, or the day before. We did a Skype interview that should be coming out soon on MMAfighting.com. I also spoke to Demetrius Johnson recently, a bit off topic, that came out on Monday. So yeah, I spoke to Javier Mendez and we talked a bunch of topics, obviously a lot of Khabib Ferguson stuff. And it goes without saying Cormier, Stipe, and just where Cormier is at. And he thinks Cormier is looking good. He started training again hard. And what other updates can I give you from Cormier? And yeah, and he thinks that Cormier is just gonna sit out and really wait for that Stipe trilogy. Like he wants nothing else. I think at this point is just fighting Stipe and that's it. So I do think that fight's gonna happen. At this point, it's just waiting for Stipe to get healthy. Yeah. But yeah, oh shit. Hit my mic here. But yeah, so yeah, that should be fun. Looking forward to that one. Another trilogy is, and I know a lot of people are not about this for some reason, but Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz 3. The moment the second one was over, I'm like, all right, we have a trilogy in our hands. Like, when is this gonna go down? It hasn't. Obviously, Conor has had his issues and also went a different path with boxing and some other avenues as well. But and he's been very successful, and then he ended up fighting for the lightweight title, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then Nate Diaz has gone on his own path as well. But I think that's a little get out of jail free card for the UFC. Like, given their rivalry, their history, the way the fights went, the fact that they're one apiece, you can run the third one back at any moment. I think the time to do it is now. Conor's trying to have a season. Conor's trying to get some momentum. In a way, kind of like John Jones, clean up his image a little bit from some of the headlines he's caused, and not only outside of fighting, but also within fighting. The loss to Khabib, the loss to Floyd Mayweather. So what a better way to do it than run it back with Nate Diaz? I mean, I'm not saying that that's a tune-up fight and he's going to beat Diaz, because honestly Diaz is more than capable of beating Conor, but you know out of all the challenges available for him, I think Nate Diaz is one of the most manageable and favorable matchups for him. So I think that's a trilogy to make, and it'd be fun. I mean, all the buildups for the other two were exciting. They were fun. The fights itself were exciting. So that's a trilogy that I want to see. But for some reason, whenever I put this out on Twitter or I talk about it on my live stream or whatever, like a lot of people are just like not interested, or maybe they're just Conor McGregor haters, and anything about Conor McGregor just turns them off. I don't know, but I'm interested in seeing that trilogy, and I think other people should be too. I don't know why it doesn't have as much traction. What other trilogy from besides those two? That is a great question, Amy. If you have any suggestions, throw it out on the chat. I'd like to see if maybe if you guys have some ideas. Trying to think of other trilogies. That is a great question. I can't think of any at the moment. Any others for 2020? I mean, I was gonna say some dumb shit. Fuck, I'm gonna say it anyways. I think it's, and I'm gonna be very clear about this. It's not that I want to see it. It's not that I'm pushing for it. I just want to be very clear right off the bat. But all I'm saying is that there could be a space for it, and it could be possible. If we saw how John Jones has been looking lately, right? He's looked a little bit more vulnerable than he has in the past, right? We saw how Cormier looked against Stipe. I mean, I just talked about how great he looked, even despite the defeat, right? If Cormier were to pick up like some crazy win against Stipe, and it's not a first round knockout where people are still like, oh, that was fluky or whatever they want to say, which it never is, right? But still, let's say it's a very convincing win, and he looks good, and he were to go out there and call out John Jones, be like, yo, come up to heavyweight, let's do this at my weight. I feel like even though Cormier is down 2, well, 1 is a no contest, but he did lose. I do think there could be room for some appetite for that trilogy. Like I said, I was just talking to Javier Mendez this week, and he was telling me, like, I asked him, so a lot has made it since Cormier moved up to heavyweight. Like, people forget that his past heavyweight run with Strikeforce, and even early in the UFC, like, people just remember him as UFC light heavyweight champion, and they should, because that's really where he did like his biggest body of work, or maybe his most important, or his lengthiest. Maybe important is not fair, because obviously winning a heavyweight title is very important. But I did ask him, do you think he's a better fighter at heavyweight than he is a light heavyweight? And he was just like, yeah, that's obvious, like by a million miles. Like, the only reason why Cormier went down to 205 was because he didn't want to fight Cain Velasquez, and because that's his buddy, and his buddy was the champ, or wasn't champ, but wanted to get back his belt, and was still active at heavyweight. And then he told me, he's like, before he went up to heavyweight, he asked Cain and his wife for permission, and he wouldn't go up unless they gave him his blessings and their blessings. So yeah, there you go. So like, if heavyweight is able to give Cormier a second life, and he wants to stick a little bit longer in MMA and fight a little longer, and I don't think a lot of people would complain. Even Dana White has said it. Look, I think this guy can fight for longer. I don't know. Maybe there could be appetite for a third fight with John Jones. I think it's possible. I don't know how likely it is, but I think it's a possibility. We'll see how everything plays out. My hunch is that it probably won't happen, but crazier things have happened, right? So you never know. Anyways, those are the only ones I can think of at the moment. But yeah, that's all I got as far as trilogies. I'm checking right now if you guys have thrown out there any suggestions for other trilogies, but no, I don't think so. So yeah, I think that's it for now. But if anything comes up, I'll mention it. All right, let's see. Valentina Gomez. I want to know if you think either of the Diaz brothers makes a comeback in 2020. Yeah, for sure. Nate Diaz, I think he fights in 2020. He fights in 2020. Yeah, probably later, deep into 2020, maybe summer, maybe fall. He has to heal up from those nasty cuts, but that man just proved against Masvidal that he's still a big name, that he doesn't need Conor McGregor to be a big name to pull pay-per-views. And he's a fighter, man. That's what he does. So I'm sure we'll see him around. As far as Nick Diaz, I haven't heard much about him since the Ariel interview, and he seemed interested in a comeback. And there was a little bit of traction with that Masvidal, the idea of a Masvidal fight. But obviously, I think Masvidal has moved on to Usman. That seems to be the case for Summer. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know about Nate Diaz. I would say Nick Diaz. I would say this for MMA Junkie. I did like this 20 fights I'd like to see in 2020, and one of them was Nick Diaz versus Carlos Condit too. Now, hear me out. All right. The two fought to a very controversial draw. To this day, you look on certain various YouTube videos, and it's always Nick Diaz 1, 2, and 5, right? That's like that kind of became like a little. I'm not impressed by your performance. That kind of became a little, not inside joke in MMA, but like a hardcore thing. With yeah, it kind of got a life of its own. It kind of had like that fight itself began to have kind of like a cult following. That was for the interim belt, if I'm not mistaken. Carlos Condit won that fight. Look, it was a fairly exciting fight. It was a fight that clearly it was interesting. It was, a lot of people think Diaz got robbed. A lot of people thought, Carlos Condit did enough to win. I think at this time, clearly, and again, I'm not throwing any shade, just looking at the facts, Carlos Condit has had a dip in his career. He hasn't won some fights in some time, hasn't looked as sharp. Obviously, he's a lot older. That's just natural. And Nick Diaz has been inactive for a really long time. So it's not like you're putting someone up here and down here. They're kind of like in the same space. And they're still two big enough names where, they can add some value to a card, whether it's the main event of a fight night or, puff up a pay-per-view card, whatever it is. I think fans would be interested in it. And I think it's a good fight for both, especially if we want to find out where Nick Diaz is at. Do it against Carlos Condit. He has the name value to make it interesting. He has the history to make it interesting. And he's at a point in his career to give Nick Diaz not a hand, but, the closest you can get in the UFC to a tune-up fight. And if Nick Diaz is not able to get past Carlos Condit, then we know where he's at. And I think the questions of him possibly facing Masvidal or Conor or whoever, I think, that should probably go away, right? But yeah, I feel like that'd be a good fight. So I'd like to see that. So yeah, I'd like to. So I think Nate, to answer your question, Valentina, Nate Diaz definitely comes back in 2020, I believe. And Nick Diaz, I don't know if he does, but if he does, I'd like to see him against Carlos Condit. So that's that. Mikus 217, what's up, compa? ¿Qué más, parcero? ¿Todo bien? Meoh, what's your favorite cereal? Frosted Flakes. Yeah. It's kind of plain, but yeah. In Colombia, it's called Sucaritas, and they actually took out a special edition of Arequipe. It's like dulce de leche. It's like our dulce de leche, and that shit was bomb. It doesn't exist here in the U.S. though, which is a shame because that was my favorite cereal. The Frosted Flakes dulce de leche / Arequipe edition doesn't exist in the U.S. Why? I don't know, but in Colombia, that thing was so good. And they would only take it out like a limited amount of time. It would be like, all right, we're making a batch, and it would be out for like a few months, and people would be going crazy, and then it'd go away, and they'd bring it every now and then. But yeah, I don't know if they still do. I mean, I haven't lived there in a while, but I believe they do. Yeah, but that's my favorite cereal. I liked Fruit Loops when I was a kid for a while, but I don't know what happened. I just kind of just stopped digging it after a while. Amy, we back at it again. The interview you were most nervous for. Hmm. So a long time, a really long time, when I first started like working in MMA media, I had an internship with this Hispanic media outlet. It was all in Spanish, called El Octágono. By the way, shout out to Camilo Ortiz, Andrea Calle, and shit, I'm forgetting now. Rafa Villafane. And those guys really helped me out a lot, and they got me, a step into MMA media. It was all in Spanish though. And one of my very first interviews, we met. I think we met Cain Velasquez at like, where was this? This was in Miami. This was at a TV station. I forgot what it was. It wasn't Telemundo. I forgot what TV station it was, but like some people were doing an interview with Cain Velasquez, and we were kind of given a heads up and allowed to go and talk to him there, and he was down to talk to us. So I did. That was like, I think, one of my very first on camera interviews in Spanish, interviewing Cain Velasquez. You can look it up. It's up on YouTube. I was really nervous because at the time Cain Velasquez was champ. He was coming off that victory over Bigfoot Silva, where he blooded his face up and just ground and pounded him, and it was like really bad. So at that time, Cain Velasquez was the man, and obviously, like, being Hispanic and at the time working for a Hispanic media outlet, that was literally the biggest interview you can get within the sport as far as Hispanic stars. And he was super cool, man. Cain Velasquez, super chill guy, super quiet, soft spoken. I believe over time he got a little bit more comfortable with media, but he was really, really quiet. But he was really nice with us and with his time. And yeah, I was nervous, but I thought it went well. And yeah, it was a good interview. And after that, like, over time, you kind of just, I mean, it becomes a job, so you kind of just, I don't know. I don't really feel nervous anymore, to be honest. But yeah, for that one, I was like, oh shit, it's Cain Velasquez. But yeah, that was the interview. I was also really young too. I was like, what, like maybe like 20 years old, maybe 2019. Like I was a kid, so I didn't know anything. Mikus 217. What do you think of this mentality Dom has after Jones fight? Reminds me of Hendricks, where they refused to accept a loss in a super close fight. So I'm guessing Hendricks obviously referencing to the GSP fight he had. No, man. I mean, if I can definitely see like why some people might be like, oh, sore loser, or hanging on to the past or whatever. But like, he definitely has a case, man. He definitely has a case. And I know John Jones came out there saying, and his manager did too, like, oh, we've rewatched the fight and we're confident in our win. And some are suggesting that he was like Joe Solis scorecard, 4-1 makes sense for Jones. I don't see it. I gotta admit, I have to go back and look at the fight. I saw it live and I haven't seen it since. But when it's because like when I'm working, for the most part, like all the fights I have two monitors, right? So I'm working here on this one, and then I'm paying close attention to this one where I'm reading your questions. So I'm always like, I'm always watching the corner of my eye and always keeping a close look to the fight. But when it comes to main events and in fights like these, like big fights, like championship bouts, for the most part, I might do some stuff in between rounds, but I just kind of let go of the wheel, and I just really pay attention to everything. And I watch it really closely. I'm constantly looking at the time to make sure how long a person's been dominant for. So when you see a title change, you go, okay, Jones-Reyes was dominant for about 3 minutes. There's a title change now. John Jones is winning, but for those 3 minutes, etc. So all I'm trying to say is I pay close attention. And man, I'm telling you, going into that fourth round, it was pretty clear to me that Dom was up. I tweeted, I'm like, wow, Dominick Reyes is up. Like, John Jones needs a finish. Like, there wasn't like, oh, this is a close one. It might be 3-0. It might be 2-1. I don't know. For me, it was pretty close. And then from then on, Jones just took control and obviously won the fight and won the last two. And like I said in my previous on my recap for UFC 247 on Sunday, if this were a fight to the death, if this were unlimited rounds, Jones would win. I mean, it was clear that he was, you know, on a come up, and Reyes was on a downfall. So there is something to that. Also, you got to keep in mind it's the old scoring system, which favors forward pressure and octagon control. And John Jones did have a lot of that. He did dictate the action and push the action, but that's how you got to fight John Jones. So what do I think about his mentality? No, I think it's the right mentality. I mean, if you really want an immediate rematch, if you want to run it back, if you really believe you beat John Jones and you can do it again, you got to go out there and run your mouth. You got to go out there and say what's on your mind. You got to go out there and call it how it is. Say that, you feel robbed. And yeah, if you just sit around and not say anything and say, well, that's how the judges saw it, your odds for getting an immediate rematch just dwindle immediately, just start going down immediately. So I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to get an immediate rematch. So everything that he says makes perfect sense for that purpose. So I don't hate on him for that. And, I think he's completely entitled to say that, especially because he does have a case. It's not like some Adrian Broner shit where got his ass whooped and he's saying like, oh, I won the fight and I thought I won the fight and the judges are BS. No, he really does have a case. And, that's why we're talking about it now. So I have no issues with Dominick Reyes taking up this mentality and going and doing a million interviews and saying, speaking his mind and saying that he was robbed because, he has a case. He has a case. Again, it was a close fight. That third one was close. I'll admit it. But he does have a case. A lot of people thought he won, including myself. Robert Napolitano. It wasn't really super close. Reyes won first three, John last two. Yeah, I mean that's how most people saw it. Let's see here. Zhang versus Valentina next. The only female fight to make. I have some comments about Weili Zhang. Nothing bad, obviously. I respect Weili Zhang, and I've given her tons of credit. I mean, even before she became champ with the Andrade fight, I was one of the very few people that actually gave her a chance. I remember, I did a video, and some people tweeted me like, "You really think Zhang stands a chance against Andrade?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I really do." And then she knocked her out in the first round, and then a lot of people were like, "Yo, you were right," and I had a lot of tweets about that. So just want to say that up front. But I do think she's being a little bit overhyped. I mean, she's only I mean, she hasn't even defended the belt, right? She only won the belt, and that's it. Like, we're not talking about or am I crazy? Am I missing something here? Let me just double check. I haven't had all my coffee, so she only won the belt, and that's it. She hasn't done anything else. I mean, she does. Yeah, she won the belt against Andrade, and that's it. Yeah, I mean, she's beaten Tisha Torres, who's super legit. Jessica Aguilar, who's super legit. Danielle Taylor, who's good as well. And then she has like a crazy streak that she hasn't lost since her first professional fight. So yeah, of course, she's like a very good fighter. She's the champion. 100% she's a good fighter. But a lot of people are talking about her like if she's cleaned out the division. Like, why would we want... Sorry, not to hate on you here, Robert Napolitano. I appreciate your input, but I don't understand this idea of like her already challenging Valentina. Like, dude, there is still a bunch of killers at 115 that like I'd like to see her fight against. I'd like to see her establish her reign as a dominant champion. Obviously, Young Jacek is a big test coming up. You got Rose Namajunas, who's just coming back as well from her layoff, and she'll be fighting Jessica Andrade actually. There's Claudia Gadella still. She got booked recently against Marina Rodriguez, but she's on a nice little streak and kind of building some momentum. We don't know what's going on with Tatiana Suarez and her neck issues, but whenever that gets resolved, she's number one contender. Like, there's a lot of options for her. So before we start talking about super fights for her and talking about one of the most dominant champions out there and stuff like that, like let's see her defend her belt. I think that's fair. Obviously, like, I understand why Dana White always like throws Weili Zhang in. Like recently, like he was asked about, I think it was John Morgan. Yeah. I actually wrote this story. He was asked about like what's the future for Valentina Shevchenko if she were to get past Kailin Shukagan, which she did. And then he's like, yo, if you just look at the female division, like we got the most badass fighters, you know, Amanda Nunes, Valentina Shevchenko, Weili Zhang, like they're so badass. Like I agree, all those three are super badass, but they're putting Weili Zhang as if she were like, she already defended her belt like 6-7 times like Jędrzejczyk did and cleared out the division, and there's no challenges for her but to move up a weight class, and she's already like a GOAT. She's very young into her career, so let's see what she does. At some point, if she keeps being dominant and defending her belt against, you know, and Valentina keeps doing the same thing, 100% that fight makes sense. Would love to see that fight. Would love to see that fight now, but I think, you know, let's see what she does. She still has a lot of contenders that are tough at 115. Let's see how she looks there, and let's see if she proves she's really miles above everybody else. And there's a reason to believe that. I mean, she's clearly looking good, but I think we should pump our brakes a little bit on her hype. But I understand it. First Chinese champion, all that. I understand it. I just want to see more. That's all. Not hating, Weili. I think you're a fantastic fighter. You're probably not watching this, but just saying. Let's see. Where was I? Kind of got lost here. Marcos Aceves, we love you, bro. Dude, I love you guys. All 48 live viewers right now. I love you guys. Cannonier versus Till. I mean, that fight looks like it's going to happen, right? It seems both fighters want it, but it seems there's some visa issues there until even tweeting at President Donald Trump to do something about it. Shit, I got Cannonier, but that's a tough one. Till's good. Till's really good. But Cannonier's, he's in the best. This is the best time of his career right now. He's on a wild streak. Mark Kalig. Joe Rogan said he believes the 4th and 5th round should be worth more. What are your thoughts on this seemingly goofy concept? This is obviously in reference to the Jon Jones versus Dominick Reyes fight. Yeah, I did watch it. I believe he said that in the podcast he did with Rashad Evans, which was good. I haven't seen it all, but I saw like half of it. I do think in theory, the 4th and 5th are more valuable. Like I said, for if we're talking about from a non-sport standpoint, if we're talking about from just strictly fighting standpoint, 4th and 5th are telling of the momentum, right? Like I said previously, if this were a fight to the death, if this were unlimited rounds, Jon Jones would have probably won that fight. Who had the best approach, Jon Jones or Dominick Reyes? And not talking about sports and forget about scoring, just to a fight. 100% Jon Jones. Jon Jones was fighting in a style not to win points, but in a style that would ultimately, like if he were fighting to death. Like if this was Pride era where like Royce Gracie fought Sakuraba for 90 minutes, I think it was, or like 95 minutes because there was unlimited time, you would want to fight like Jon Jones. Jon Jones fought to ultimately win, and not to win rounds or win on the scorecards. Like if let's just say if you were to get into a street fight right now and there's no cops or anyone around to stop it, it's just you and someone else, you want to fight like Jon Jones. Defense 100%, not exerting a whole lot of energy, just enough to defend yourself, to have some attack, and then enough to keep it steady and then pick it up over time. That's how Jon Jones was fighting. So in that sense, yes, 4th and 5th from a what kind of standpoint? From a purist sense, yeah, they should be worth more, and in my opinion, they are worth more, right? From a purist sense. But this is a sport, and you got to stick to a certain scoring criteria, and this scoring criteria is that every round is the same, and then we tally up all the rounds at the end, and whoever won the most rounds wins the fight. Simple as that. Jon Jones didn't achieve that, but he did fight. I would even argue that with a better strategy if you're thinking about long term. I think Jon Jones, did that. But in theory, yeah, they should be worth more. But as far as like implementing it into the actual rule set, like, hey guys, just letting you know, if you do win 4th and 5th round, that counts more. So could win the fight if you just save your energy or fight best in those rounds. I think that's a little bit of I don't like that. I do not like that. But from a purist, I do standpoint, I do agree with him. They should be, yeah. Extra Life Gaming. How's your relationship with Luke now? Now you are at a different companies. I mean, we don't work together anymore because obviously we no longer work for the same employer, but we're still cool. We're still friends. And I don't see him as often because I used to see him every week with the MAR and MMA beat, but that's not the case. But last time I saw him was at UFC 244. He covered that event. That was my last event covering it for MMAfighting.com. That was Diaz Masvidal, and we were hanging out the entire time. He was a cool cat, and we talk every now and then. But he's doing his thing. I'm doing mine. Let's see. James Fallon Cote. What's next for Dustin Poirier? Would you like to see him fight? Who would you like to see him fight next? Ooh, that's a tricky one. I feel like Dustin Poirier's last performance, like kind of like really brought his stock up, and also just defeating Max Holloway and winning the interim belt. All that. But this time off that he's had, I don't think it served him any good. He's kind of been forgotten a little bit. Don't get me wrong. He's still on the headlines. He's still one of the best fighters in the division. But, I mean, certainly things are moving, and he's not, because he's not active. He's not fighting. I know he's waiting for that perfect opportunity. But, man, if it doesn't come, I think he's so good that he can just take any tough fight and probably win. And then from then on, he'll have a bigger claim to ask for those big fights. But I also get him. He's at a point in his career where he is older. He's still very, very skilled. His brand is the highest it's ever been. And, he feels like he can get some big fights and make some good cash. So I get that too. It's tough. I mean, he doesn't really have like, I guess the Diaz fight is a possibility since they were scheduled to fight and a lot of people were excited for that, but then he was injured and had to pull out. That could be an option for him. I still like that for McGregor. You guys know how I feel about that. He's called out McGregor. I'm down for that too. I mean, there's really no wrong option for Dustin Poirier. Anyone you pair him up against is going to be exciting. It's going to be fun, and yeah. So all I would say is like a top guy. That's it. Fight someone at the top. But again, it's easier said than done because everyone wants to win certain fights and certain kind of matchups. So it's hard to get. I get it. I'm gonna put my coffee here. I keep bumping it against the mic. Let's see what else. If Corey Anderson wins by convincing stoppage, how likely will he get Jon Jones next? Big O. Shouts out to Big O. Thank you for asking that. Dude, I'm all about Jon Jones versus Corey Anderson. And if he wins, Corey Anderson should totally get the next shot at Jon Jones. Let me see. I'm pulling up Corey Anderson's resume right here. We're 40 minutes into this live chat. Dude, he's on a 4-fight win streak. If he beats Jan, that's going to be 5 fights in a row. And that includes, some pretty dominant decisions. Obviously, a win over Patrick Cummins. That's a good win. Glover Teixeira, excellent win. Win over Ilir Latifi, very good win. Win TKO, first round TKO of Johnny Walker, excellent win. And if you beat Jan, who's also on a nice little streak of his own, then it means something for sure. So I'd like to see him fight Jon Jones. I know Luke Thomas said with Brian Campbell on Morning Combat, he was like, I have no interest in watching Corey Anderson versus Jon Jones. I do. I think that's a fantastic fight. Number one, have you seen how fired up Corey Anderson has been? Like, that'd be one hell of a buildup. I'm not. This is no slight to Reyes, but I mean, Reyes did kind of bark a little bit at him, but towards the end, he was just like, man, I'm just fed up with this shit. Like, I'm just gonna fight and prove. I believe I can beat him, prove I'm the best. Like that's all I want to do. And he went out there and did what he did. But I have a feeling with Corey Anderson, dude, that's gonna be some heat. I mean, Corey Anderson, I don't know if you remember, somewhat recently he showed up to like I think it might have been like a Metro PCS signing of Jon Jones, and he was out there kind of like running his mouth on the sidelines, and they got in each other's face a little bit. Um, Corey Anderson would make the build up interesting, and also John Jones' last two performances. A lot of people think he lost. A lot of people thought he lost against Reyes. A lot of people thought he lost against Majeta. So it's not like I feel like any fight that John Jones takes now is a little bit more interesting now because I mean he's not being beaten, but people are getting close. People are getting close. And do you think Corey Anderson could beat Thiago Santos? Maybe you favor Santos, but you can totally see a scenario where Corey comes out on top. Same thing against Reyes. So John Jones, Corey Anderson, I don't know. I think that fight could be very competitive, man. I really do, and I think it could have a fun build-up. And I'm interested in seeing John Jones, the elder statesman, just the OG of the division at this point, just take on all these young guys that are coming up. So I'm all for it. I'm all for John Jones versus Corey Anderson. And also, this is in Albuquerque, right? Or Rio Rancho, whatever. But and John Jones is going to be there. If Corey Anderson were to get some stupid win and just go erratic, just go insane how he did against after he finished Johnny Walker and do something crazy because John Jones is going to be in the crowd, shit, cut a badass promo and sign me up for that fight. I'm all in. I'm all in for Corey Anderson versus John Jones. After that, I don't know if I'm down to see rematches or the Anthony Smith and others. I don't know about that. But the Corey Anderson one, I want to see that fight. I really, really do. I'm telling you, I was there at UFC 244 when he beat Johnny Walker. And when he went backstage, that dude was fired up. Like, he was just pissed. Like, you can just, it was just in the air. Like, you're like, whoa. Like, there's some dark shit going on in that guy. Good, though. Like, good. He's, like, fired up. I don't mean it as bad. So yeah, I'm all in. I'm all for it. And yes, Corey Anderson wins. He should totally get a shot against John Jones. 100%. Let's see what other questions are out here. Recently, Extra Life Gaming recently came across your channel, Danny. I wish you all the success. Keep up the content. We will watch. Thank you, Extra Life Gaming. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's tough to do, man. I'm busy and it ain't easy, but I love doing this, so I want to keep doing it more. And I can only do it if you guys join in and participate. So yeah, I appreciate your support. I really do. Thank you. And if you're listening, subscribe, give me a like, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. See what other questions we got. Jones versus DC at heavy. Yep, I talked about it. I'm not for it right now, but if certain situations happen, if certain stars align, I can see a scenario where there could be some appetite for a third fight at heavyweight for sure. Robert Napolitano, you only run a trilogy if the series is 1-1. Yes and no. For the most part, yeah, that's the case. But there are specific cases like, it's technically a no contest, right? Like John Jones tested positive. There's a lot of bad blood. Cormier is clearly a better fighter at heavyweight than he is at light heavyweight. John Jones seems to be slowing down a little bit. I mean, there are certain factors in there. Again, I get you. DC's down 2-0. Usually there shouldn't be a trilogy, but if certain things align, I can see a scenario where that fight all of a sudden, gets attractive again. So yeah. All right, most of these just comments. I don't see any questions. I'm gonna keep scrolling down. Zhang is the only girl who poses a threat to Valentina besides the GOAT, Amanda Nunes. Maybe. Zhang definitely poses some very interesting challenges to Valentina Shevchenko. But again, I'd like to see her defend the belt before any super fights. I'd like, and not only her, any champion, any person that earns and inherits a division, I'd like to see him stick around before, start getting champ super fights. That's just my preference. Greetings from Argentina. Saludos. I love Argentina. I want to go to Argentina so bad. Hopefully, I get to cover an event there. Um, I have one of my best friends is Argentinian. I love Argentinian culture, food, amazing, barbecues, carne asada, yeah, some nice wine. Yeah, I'd like to go to Argentina. Marcos says, thank you so much for the live stream and just chilling in the ice bath. Nice. You will reach the top sooner than later. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So I think these are a little bit of the questions coming to an end here. So I'm going to answer a couple more if you guys throw them right now in the chat. We are 15 minutes deep into this live chat. So it should be coming to a close fairly soon. So I'm going to read a couple more questions and then bounce out. Sounds good? What position do you play in soccer? Center, mid? I can do a little bit of everything, but I'm more of a holding midfield player. I'm not extremely fast. I'm not slow either, but I have really good cardio. I can run the entire game, keep a good pace. I'm fairly strong for my size. I have good passing, good vision, good control of the ball. That's where I shine best, and I'm good defensively as well. But I don't have the size or the height to be like a really good center back. It gets tough being like 5'7" and marking people unless you're like a Gary Medel. But it gets tough marking people like a lot taller than you. Being a center back. So the best is for me. The best is playing in the middle. Yeah, center mid. I can play right mid as well. But again, I feel like you need someone a little quicker for that, ideally. But I can do that. Gary Freeman, are you from Brooklyn originally? Grew up there? No, I've been living in Brooklyn for like 4 years now. I moved to New York 4 years ago. Prior to that, I lived in Miami for like 10 years ago. I've been in this country for like 14. I'm 27. I moved here when I was like 13, 12 years old from Colombia. So I went from Colombia when I was 12 to Miami, went to middle school, high school, and college in Miami. And then I moved up here 4 years ago to pursue my dreams of working in MMA media full time, and I achieved that, and I have other goals as well. So, yeah, I've been out here grinding, and I'm gonna keep grinding. Still not tired of the city yet, but I can definitely see a point where, I'm done with the New York lifestyle. But for now, it's fun. I like it. It's good, and I love Brooklyn. Definitely staying here. Manhattan's too much for me. I can't deal with it unless I had a shitload of money. Then I'd live somewhere really nice. But I'd probably still stay in Brooklyn, to be honest, if I had a lot of money. But yeah, I don't know. Napolitano, does Masvidal have a chance against Usman? 100% he does. Masvidal is a world-class fighter. He's very, very good. And go watch his Nate Diaz fight. Very few people have dominated Diaz like that. And Masvidal is an athlete. I don't think he gets that credit. He's super athletic. He's stupid athletic. I mean, that flying knee to jump and get that much power, that's something. He's super athletic. His hands are good. His jiu-jitsu is good. His wrestling's good. He has so much experience. He's tough as shit. Masvidal is a very good fighter. Now, Usman, stud wrestler, super strong, mentally tough. He's been proving he can stand. He's got a chin on him. I think Masvidal has a little bit more tools, but I think Usman is a little bit more dominant within his skill set. Like, obviously, wrestling is a very dominant martial art. So I can see a scenario where Usman controls Masvidal, but again, this is not a 3-round fight. I can also see a scenario where Masvidal is able to defend the takedowns and able to avoid the wrestling and doing enough on the feet. So that's a very competitive fight. I think I favor Usman slightly, but you'd be a fool to count out Masvidal on winning that title. He definitely has a chance. He's a lot more than just hype, because he does have a lot of hype behind him, right? Because of what he's been able to do and his persona and all that. But don't mistake that. Yes, it was built through charisma and all that, but that had to be fueled by skill and by being a good fighter. You don't get to where he's at being a mediocre fighter. So Masvidal is 100% world class. That's a good fight. Can't wait for that. And that's the fight to make. Let's see. Are you still training BJJ? Last time I trained was in Florida. That was like a month ago. I might get in some rounds today. I don't know. Again, with work, it's kind of tough because of my schedule, but and also I've been busy and doing other things. But I was playing soccer twice a week because I was in a league, and then I play some pickup with some people on Sunday. I got out of the league. I'm no longer doing the league because that was a not time consuming, but I'd like to replace that with jujitsu ideally. And I'm still going to be playing pickup on Sundays. And also, like, the weather if you live in New York, but the weather's been really shitty. Like, it's really cold and it's just raining a lot, and it's just not fun. So I'd rather do something indoors for now for this winter. So yeah, and I've been boxing. I do box, but yeah, something I really want to do is get consistent again with jiu-jitsu for sure. 100%. Was Mighty Mouse your first big interview on MMA Junkie? Um, I mean, considering what he's done, probably. Again, I talked to Javier Mendez this week. Thought that's a good interview. And I've also interviewed, Michael Chiesa and Yana and J Chick, former champ, former strawweight goat, right? I think Mark Quart, he's achieved a lot as well. So I've interviewed some prominent people, and I look forward to keep doing that. 100%. Check those out, MMA Junkie. I also have a playlist, an interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. So anytime I do an interview, anytime I do anything video related as far as interviewing someone, it goes there. So if you ever wondering what's my latest work, you can always go on that on my channel and look at that playlist and see what I've been up to. But yeah. And shouts out to Demetrius. I really enjoyed talking to Demetrius. That was a fun talk. And he's kind of been forgotten a little bit, I feel like, because he's obviously not fighting in the US. So there's definitely, and I think he's right about this. There's definitely his case is like people don't know what's out there, and that's true. And a lot of it is like we live in this world where there's kind of like boundaries are kind of getting deleted, right? Because the internet, and we think we know everything about the world, but it's still very compartmentalized. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, even I notice that when I go to Colombia and just start reading the news there and just watching TV there, like, there's so much stuff so much information, so many like news and problems about Colombia and in South America and other parts of the world that I get from being there than I do in the US. So I do agree with him that there's really good fighters at one. There's amazing, fights at one. It's just they don't get as much coverage, and it's understandable. Like, I work for an outlet that is out here in the U.S., so we cover U.S. stuff. Like, it's hard to send somebody to Singapore every weekend. Also, how much, are people going to care about that? From being in North America. So I do agree with him in that sense. Like, there's really good fighters over there. They're the world-class fighters over there. And, they don't get the attention that maybe they deserve. But yeah, that was a fun interview. He's a good dude. Really enjoyed chatting with him. Enrique Salazar, un abrazo desde Chile, amigo Dani. Gracias, Enrique. Saludos. Hace harto que no hablamos. Gaethje's next test, title shot. Woodley versus or Edwards. I don't know. I gotta look a little closer on that one. But if I had to pick, I'll pick Edwards. But I don't know. That's a tough one. All right. Yeah, I think that does it. Let's see. We have one more question. If when Gustafsson comes back, this is by Joe Carlson. Joe Carlson. Yeah. Do you think he should go to heavyweight or start in light heavyweight, fitting opponent in both divisions? I think I have a theory. I think I've probably I mentioned this on the MAB a couple of times. I have a theory. If you were to match up like the top 15 versus the top 15 at light heavyweight, like heavyweight versus light heavyweight, and you were to do number by number, so 15 versus 15, I think the top from 15 to 10, I think most of the time maybe a light heavyweight wins. I really do. I think there's certain things that they bring that heavyweights are just not used to seeing fighting people their own size. And a light heavyweight still has enough strength to kind of hang in there. We just saw freaking Ilir Latifi take on um, Derek Lewis, and there was a big speed factor there. And also, strength wise, sure, the Black Beast is better, but I mean, stronger, but not by a whole lot. And Latifi proved that with some technique and knowing proper ties and knowing proper wrestling, you can be a little weaker, not as strong, and still be able to excel in the wrestling department, which is such a strength thing. So that's how I feel. Um, Now, the top five, I think it gets a little trickier. I think maybe most heavyweights beat the light heavyweights, I think. But there is something to be said about someone like Gustafsson. If he were to move to heavyweight, I think he puts a beating on the top 15 guys, maybe top 10. And then the top five, I think that's, or even 7, 6, I think 6, 7, I think that gets a little tougher. And something interesting to back up a little bit of my theory was when Ryan Bader fought Matt Mitrione. After the fight, Matt Mitrione was not complaining, but he's like, I was kind of bummed at fighting Ryan Bader because he didn't fight me like a heavyweight. He fought me like a light heavyweight, and light heavyweights are still small enough where they can change levels and shoot on you. When do you ever see a heavyweight shooting a double leg besides Brock Lesnar, who's a freak athlete? Almost never. Even in wrestling itself, like I remember when I was wrestling in high school, all the heavyweights would just lock up, boom, and just it was like Greco-Roman. You never saw a light heavyweight, I mean a heavyweight shoot for a double or a low single. Like they just don't have kind of athleticism. So anyways, I'm going to a bit of a rant here, but I do think Gustafsson could have some fun fights and have a lot of success at heavyweight. But ultimately, when he reaches the top five, I think that's when size really does, get into play, like fighting a Stipe, guy that can move very light, as a heavy. That gets tough. So I'd like to see him stick around, I'd like to see him try heavyweight. Fuck it. I mean, he already had two shots, right? Or 3 shots at the light heavyweight title. Wasn't successful. So yeah, I mean, at this point, unless something changes, the belt changes, I think be light heavyweight makes sense. But why not try heavyweight? See how you look. I mean, Ilir Latifi tried it. I thought he beat Derek Lewis. Obviously, it was a close fight. It was boring, but you could probably do well. I don't know. Maybe there's only one way to find out, right? And you don't have a number to your name to hold you down or something like that. He's been inactive or retired for a little bit. All right. Anyways, yeah, that's all I got. I've crossed the hour mark. You guys know how this works. After an hour, I call it quits here. So yeah, that's all I got for this week's live Q&A. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. I appreciate everyone that subscribed. Give me a thumbs up. Gave me questions on Twitter, the few of you. And also shouts out to the people in the live chat who kept this going. But next time, please, guys, have some questions on Twitter so I can have that ready and just get right into it. And also, have a nice title for this live chat. I put Douglas Lima move to 185. I can't believe nobody asked me about that, but I put that up there because I figured it'd be mentioned in the live chat, but it didn't. So yeah. Anyways, all right. So as usual, you can find me on Twitter at Danny Segura TV. Same thing goes for Instagram. I've been posting back on my Facebook page as well, so you can give me a like there. So Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at Danny Segura TV. I appreciate the love. You guys have a good rest of your Thursday and hopefully a good weekend as well coming up. And also enjoy the fights. UFC Rio Rancho this weekend and Bellator 239. Stick around MMAJunkie.com. We got all the coverage you need. So, yeah, that's all I got. Appreciate everything. I'll talk to you guys probably on Sunday. Stay tuned for that. I'll post something on Twitter if I stream on Sunday. Peace.